Hello everybody, and welcome to another video. Today, I'm going to be doing a minimum kill run of Undertale to celebrate it turning a decade old this year, even though I'm a couple of months early. Of course, I always start with the rules in these videos, and they're quite simple this time around. 1. No enemies can die from any action I do. With the rules out of the way, let's get started. The game starts out with me choosing a name for the fallen human, so I decide to name them Alice. After this, I can start walking around, and I stumble into Flowey the Flower. Flowey introduces us to how fights work. You want to move your soul, the little red heart, away from all the white projectiles to avoid taking damage. If you get hit too much, it's of course game over. Flowey leaves after this, and Toriel shows up. Not long after this, Toriel decides to teach me more about fighting. During a fight, there are 4 action commands you can do. There's Fight, which we will hopefully never use, but it is just attacking. There's Item, which lets me use items, which usually heal me. There's also Spare, which lets me spare an enemy if their name is yellow, or run away from a fight. To make an enemy's name yellow, I usually have to use the final command, Act. Acting lets me try to appease an enemy, which will let me spare them and move on with the game. After this, Toriel leaves, and the game truly starts. Since there's a run command that's available for every enemy except bosses, I'll skip most of every area and only talk about the bosses. The first boss is Napstablook. They're pretty easy to spare, I just have to compliment them a few times and they'll leave. The second fight is Toriel. She can't let us leave the ruins, since she's worried that we could get hurt, so to stop us, she fights us. During this fight, acting doesn't work. Items only heal me, running isn't allowed on bosses, and I can't spare her unless her name is yellow, so it looks like the end of the run already. All I can do is nothing and see if that works. Oh, it actually did. After sparing Toriel, she leaves and lets me move into the second area, Snowdin. There's actually several bosses in Snowdin. The first one is Doggo, but he's a joke to fight. To dodge his attacks, all I have to do is not move, since blue attacks don't hurt you if you don't move. To spare him, I just have to pet him once. The second fight is against Dogami and Doggeressa. Their attacks are a bit more involved to dodge, having me weave between bullets or slide under their axes, but it's not too bad. To spare them, I have to roll in some snow, get re-sniffed, then pet both of them. The next fight is against the Greater Dog. To spare the Greater Dog, I can simply throw a stick and win immediately, leading me into the final fight of the area, the Great Papyrus. The first part of this fight is pretty pathetic. All of his attacks completely miss me if I don't move, but after a bit he uses a new attack, turning me blue. This makes it so I actually have to dodge his attacks again by applying gravity to my soul. To spare Papyrus, I have to survive his special attack, which he uses after I survive for a while. After a while of surviving, he finally uses his special attack, and it's stolen by a dog. So Papyrus has to use a cooler normal attack instead. After surviving it, I spare Papyrus and move into the next area, Waterfall. But, before actually going to Waterfall, I might as well go on a date with Papyrus since he was so kind. After a quick date, I leave for Waterfall. Waterfall only has 2 bosses compared to Snowdin's 4. The first fight is against the Mad Dummy. The only way to get the Mad Dummy to lose is to hurt him by getting him to hit himself. The first part of the fight consists of standard projectiles that move in a straight line, so as long as I'm directly between the bullet and the dummy, it'll hit him. The second phase is a little trickier. He'll use homing rockets instead, so I have to avoid them until they launch off and hit the dummy. After a little while of this, the Mad Dummy runs away, and I can move on to the second boss of the area, Undyne. During Undyne's fight, I have to move a shield to block her spears, but that isn't too hard to do. The real problem is that there isn't any way to spare her though. It would be a real shame if, for some reason, I could run away during this fight and just escape. Yep, it would be a real shame. After running away, I escape into Hotland. Before I do the bosses in Hotland, I quickly go over to Undyne's house, have a quick dinner, and burn it down. You know, standard friend stuff. The first fight in Hotland is Metaton. Instead of a normal fight though, all of its attacks are a quiz. Thankfully, Alphys in the back will give me all the right answers, and all I have to do is survive until Metaton leaves. The second fight is against Royal Guard 1 and Royal Guard 2. Their attacks aren't too hard to dodge, I just have to move left or right. To spare them though, I need to clean Royal Guard 2's armor until the dirt is cleaned off, making his armor too hot to wear. He'll then take off his chest plate. Once that happens, I just have to whisper to Royal Guard 1, and the fight ends. The third fight is against Muffet, but to beat this fight, I just have to survive her attacks for a while, and then I can spare her. The final fight is against Mettaton again. This time, it actually attacks, but I also get to shoot bullets now, letting me get rid of its bullets. After surviving 3 turns, I can trick Mettaton to turn around and flip a switch on its back, turning it into its true form. When Mettaton is in its true form, its attacks are much harder to dodge. The only way to beat it is to get its rating to a high enough score. There are several ways I can do this. I can avoid getting hit, I can pose, or I can boast. After a while, I eventually get the ratings high enough and move on to the final part of the game. The final fight is against the King of the Underground, Asgore. His attacks are very strong and deal a lot of damage. I can't beat him by acting, sparing, or running away, or even surviving long enough. The only way to win this fight is to fight. Since I'm still level 1, it's very easy for me to run low on health and have to waste a turn healing. But after a bit of fighting, I get Asgore low on health. With a small amount of health left, he can't even stand anymore, and I'm given a choice. I obviously chose to spare him, but Flowey shows up, kills Asgore, and steals 6 souls that Asgore was just keeping around just because. After this, I black out and wake up fighting against Omega Flowey. Omega Flowey acts as a huge gauntlet where I have to survive dozens of attacks in a row while I deal chip damage to him. Every once in a while, I get into a soul segment where I have to dodge one long attack, and after that I free one of the souls and get some health back. Repeat this for a total of 6 times, and this leads to the final part of the fight, where I get to deal massive damage to Omega Flowey and take him down. After defeating him, I'm given the option to kill or spare him, so guess what I chose? And that's it, Undertale fully completed. But what kind of ending is this? Being stuck in the endless black abyss for all of eternity? I'm going to reload my save file and find a better ending. After reloading my save file, I get a phone call to deliver a letter to Alphys's laboratory. After doing that, I enter the laboratory and go down into the lower levels of the lab. This area actually has the most boss fights out of any area in the entire game. Most of them are pretty easy to deal with though. The first encounter is 3 memory heads. All I have to do is call them, then refuse, and then I can spare them. The second enemy down here is Lemon Bread. When acting, Lemon Bread has 6 different options to pick from. Out of the 6, I need to unhug, hum, and flex, which will allow me to spare them the next turn. The third encounter is against an Amalgamate. To spare the Amalgamate, I need to do these commands in this order. I need to beckon it, pet it, play with it, and then pet it another 2 times. Once that's done, I can spare it. The next encounter is another Amalgamate. To spare this Amalgamate, I just have to tell it a joke 3 times. Its attacks aren't even remotely dangerous, so this is a really easy fight. The final fight in the lab is the Reaper Bird. To spare the Reaper Bird, I have to pick on it, mystify it, and pray, which lets me spare it. This lets me restore power to the lab, and once I get back to the elevator, I white out and show up back at Asgore. Since the way back is blocked now, I have no choice but to go back and fight Asgore again. Instead of an actual fight though, Toriel steps in and stops the fight. All of my friends show up again, and all's well. Until Flowey shows up and steals the 6 souls again. After stealing the 6 souls, he steals all of the monster's souls as well, and then transforms into Azrael Dreamer. The first part of this fight is very easy. As long as I survive, I'll slowly progress the fight. At the end of the first phase, Azrael uses a huge attack that lowers me to 1 health, and I die for the first time in the entire game. Dying in this fight works differently than dying in other fights. Instead of having to restart the entire fight, there are checkpoints that I get to start from. After reviving, Azrael has ascended to a stronger form, and I can no longer do anything but struggle. After a few turns of struggling, a new option opens up. Saving. When using the save action, I can choose to save any of my friends. I start by going for Toriel and Asgore. To save them, I just have to do 4 actions that'll save them. After saving those two, I decided to save Papyrus and Sans. Yet again, I can save them by doing any 4 actions. The third encounter is with Undyne. This time I only need 3 actions. The final person left to save is Alphys, requiring another 3 actions. Once everyone is saved, I realize there's actually one person left, Azrael. Spending a few turns trying to save him, he uses his strongest attack, leaving me at 0.000000001 health. After a bit more of trying to save him, it works. He returns to normal, and using the power of the souls, destroys the barrier. After saving everyone and destroying the barrier, everyone is free to return to the surface. Of course, before we end, we have to do a tally of how many kills there were. There were 0 kills in the ruins, 0 kills in Snowden, 0 kills in Waterfall, 0 kills in Hotland, 0 kills in the core, 0 kills in the lab, and 0 kills in the final battle, adding up to a grand total of 0 kills! Thank you all so much for watching, and if you somehow didn't know, this was an April Fool's video. If you enjoyed it, it would help a lot if you all liked and subscribed, and I'll see you in the next video.